Hello, Professor. So, for my critical assignment, I would be talking about Sutherland AFC. Uh, the reason why I chose this is because I'm a big soccer fan. Been watching it since I was a little kid, and Netflix released a series on the team. I'm not a fan of them, but uh, I'm aware of who they are. Um, so, Sutherland, they currently play in the League One division in soccer, which is the third tier in England for soccer, and the team has faced back-to-back relegation from the Premier League. And I think this is a great opportunity to observe um, how the players and how the owners and the fans go through these uh, different levels of stress and how everything plays a role altogether. Um, what I mean is like the physical, social environment. How does that affect the players, right? Um, and some of the things that you see in the series is how the players' motivation is shattered by the relegation of the team. Uh, some players don't even want to play in the team anymore, and you can see that in the series on how there's a couple of there's a player specifically who voices concern and his opinion to the new general manager and said like, hey, look, I'm only here because I'm here to fulfill my contract, and the reason why the player feels that way is because the team's no longer at the top flight league in the world, and that's a big motivation crusher not only to the fans but to the owners as well, and specifically because in the series that you see that due to what's going on with the team, a new ownership comes in, new ownership takes over, a new coaching staff, and all that plays a big role on the players, on their anxiety, on their stress, um, because now we have a new coach, new system, so that comes to play. You got to get adjusted to the different tactics and how that feels, and then ownership is putting stress on the coaching staff because now they don't have a bigger budget to work with. They have to make means with what they have. Lower budget means that they have to promote within the team. That's why I highlight on how um, because of the promoting within, uh, there's a high expectation from these youth players that Sutherland have in their academy, and because of that level of expectation, these players go through anxiety, and their motivation is sometimes put to harm, and they're stressed because they've never been in this position before, of being in the big, playing for the first team, and other things that affect what the team is going through is the family culture, for example, because the team now, the owners have an expectation that, hey, we don't have a budget, we have to make it what it means. That means you have to get rid of players or bring in players. So for the family of these players who get traded away, now they have to deal with the stress and anxiety of moving to a new city, new people, different environment. And for players coming in, it's the same thing. Their families get affected too because now they're in a completely different city, and now there's a level of expectation of these players that they need to perform. If they don't perform properly, the team might be like, hey, you know what? It's just not working. We're gonna get rid of them. Now the family has to figure out what's the next step. Um, and you can see that in the series how a couple of the wives of the athletes voiced their concern that, hey, if his contract is up at the end of the year, and if he doesn't perform up to par, then the team might feel like they need to get rid of him, and if they get rid of him, they don't have any other, they don't have a choice but to leave and relocate, or look for, he has to look for a different team who wants them. So that, that's creates a lot of stress on the players, anxiety, motivation. Um, but at the same time, I think it's a great opportunity for these youth players or any player to use this as a fuel to motivate them, to give them a desire to compete, because not because they are the sole providers of their family. You're gonna want to go out there and play and perform well, um, because you want to get that contract. And for these youth players, they have to, you know, desire to compete, not because they want to get a big contract, or they want to be known, and they want to make it big, or they're looking to get transferred to a bigger team. Their goal is to go to a different team where it's a Premier League. So these youth players need have to use that as a motivation to be able to compete and be elite athletes per se. So for the goals, you know, for my outcome goals for the team overall is to get promoted out of the third division to the second division. So it's stages. As part of the strategy, to coach, and not only the coach but the owners need to invest in the team, that by bringing the right players for the right position, as well as finding those youth players that are good and promoting them to the team. Um, Another outcome goal for the youth players is to continue to establish themselves. That way they can in the first team, so that way they can be successful. And I think that some of the players struggle with confidence. So I think that the coach plays a role in that. So the coach needs to really find a way to instill motivation, and how can he trust his players. Um, an example would be, if you know that your young striker is struggling, as a coach, you need to figure out, okay, how can I help this player perform well. Maybe instead of trying to put him in for 30 minutes, maybe give him a short amount of time. Maybe give him 10 to 15 minutes of game time, and be like, okay, look, you got 10 minutes, go it. Maybe that motivates him even more to be like, okay, I'm gonna look for that goal. But which is a great way to do it. Uh, so what I wrote for my performance goals is the team, in order to get promoted, need to win, and they need to become champions of the league. And by that means that the team, they got to perform. These players need to perform. Um, Games that are draws don't really help the team overall, so they need to turn those draws into wins and those losses as well. Uh, and a part that can help the team is by uh, dedicating time to create the chemistry, become better tactics that are going to help uh, these players win those games and improve their performance for them to win these games. Um, as part of the process goes, uh, you know, to win games, you need to score more. You need to score more than the other team. Um, so something that I noticed on the team is that some of these forwards were not scoring enough, or they weren't putting themselves in that position to be available to score. Uh, so a strategy that I think that can help these players is uh, maybe after practice, do simulations of one-on-one scenarios where the goalkeeper or the coaching staff needs to simulate like those 2-minute warnings that you see in football, where it's quick plays, quick tactics too, so these players get used to being in those stressful situations to score. Um, the second goal is these players need the coaches to motivate them, and I think that the coaches need to be very vocal and help these players increase their uh, confidence, whether it be by presentations or making a fun activity, uh, so these players' performance increases. And that's a good role of a coach. A good coach does whatever it takes for him to his team to be able to win and get his players to all on the same page. As for the verse that I picked, I think Jeremiah, a letter to the exiles, and in that, um, the Lord is trying to reassure these people of why they're there. And so he says in chapter 29, verse 11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future." I think that is very relatable to times now, especially for me, to not lose that focus that he knows that everything that I'm going through is for a reason, and I need to accept that, and that he knows uh, the perfect time for when I will reach my goals. So I think this verse is perfect to for me, and why I chose it and how it motivates me too as well. And as far as what I learned in this course, I think it opened up my mind and my perspective on how things around us have a role. They play a role in our environment, how it plays a role with ourselves, our psychological aspects. And I think that this course is going to help me teach better and coach better, because now I have a different perspective of how I can motivate a player, maybe introduce visualization to these players. That's going to help them become great athletes and be elite athletes, and then also to give me the motivation to be a great coach. Well, this concludes my presentation.